Boys and Girls Podcast.
I'm Sissy Goff.
And I'm David Thomas, and we're so glad you've joined us for this conversation. Let's dive in.
Holley Gerth is an expert on introversion and extroversion. And what a conversation we had. I loved it.
Every bit of it.
Yes, I felt like I learned so much about myself. I learned so much about kids that I counsel. It was fascinating.
This is a pull over and take notes kind of episode.
It is. We'll help you in the show notes too. But certainly she said one question that I think could be a game changer in understanding kids. So make sure you listen all the way through.
And at the very end, she had some incredible ideas for helping introverted kids who might feel a bit overwhelmed in going to church. So hang in there to the very end. This episode is packed full of good stuff.
Holley, we have been so excited about this conversation, but I have to say I would have even been more so had I known you're a Razorback beforehand.
Yes.
We won't call the Hogs,
Razorback.
but I love that. And we just have loved learning more about your work in so many different facets of what you're doing. We're so grateful. We came across you first via Annie F. Downs.
Oh, yes. I love Annie.
Us too.
She's one of my favorite humans, as I know she is for many people.
I was about to say, I think everybody who knows Annie would say she's one of their favorite humans.
Yes.
So anyway, it has been really fun. And we're so excited to have this conversation on the podcast with you.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Well, let's start there. Holley, will you just begin by telling us a little bit about you, your family, and how you found your way to the work you're doing?
Yeah, sure. I'm the granddaughter of a Christian bookstore owner, so I grew up dreaming of being a writer one day.
Oh,
I became an intern for Dayspring Cards in college and worked for them for many years. And God called me out to start writing books in 2010. And our family story is a little crazy. So Mark and I couldn't have kiddos of our own. And one day I saw a documentary about kids who age out of the foster system and thought, that's not okay. And people who asked me, have you thought about adopting? I started saying, if we adopt, we're adopting a 20-year-old. And long story short, we did.
so amazing.
God brought our daughter Lavelle into our lives through a local organization and made it clear we were supposed to be together. And that has been 12 years ago now. So she got married and had two littles, Eula and Clem. And so we get to enjoy them too. So it's been a fun journey. And my husband, Mark, and I just celebrated our 25th wedding anniversary.
Wow. Congratulations.
Thanks.
So is Nana, is that right? Is that
Yes,
your grandma?
Nana.
That's
I
awesome.
get to be Nana.
Oh, well, we have some children's books we're going to send your way for them that we're really excited
I love
about.
that. Yes.
Yeah.
They are at Disneyland right now. So they are living it up. Yep.
Yes, I bet you're getting lots of pictures of related kids. That's awesome. Well, we want to talk a little bit about your work around introversion and extroversion. We are recording a series right now called Parenting Personalities, and it's parenting personalities, but also parenting personalities, kind of both aspects of it. And we just recorded an episode about our work as therapists in introversion, extroversion, but you have done so much great research and writing in that space. And so will you talk about your own journey with that and kind of your first aha moment when you heard the word introvert?
Sure. It was actually in college in Arkansas. So I was at a campus ministry meeting and they were talking about personalities. And someone said the word introvert. And I remember it like those memories that are like a photograph in your mind where I'm like, I remember that nasty gray carpet and that, just
I
that
probably
feeling
sat in that same room on that nasty gray carpet.
Yes, probably. And just the feeling like, oh, I'm not the only one who processes the world this way. And that was really the start of the journey. And it took me a lot longer to really know how to navigate the world in ways that align with who I was. I ended up becoming, an author, doing speaking, all these things, and getting to the edge of burnout because I told myself, for God to use me, I have to be more of an extrovert. And he graciously called me home to who he made me to be and showed me that I didn't have to change that instead he wanted me to go deeper into it. And so that gave me a passion for helping other introverts do the same. I love extroverts too, but the lane I'm most often in is helping my fellow introverts embrace who they are.
Mm. You have said that introversion and extroversion are wired into our brains and nervous systems, not just our personalities. So, what does that look like in practical terms for parents trying to understand their kids?
Yes, I think first of all, it's just an openness and curiosity. And so often we can look at each other in any setting and say, I wish you would be more like me, instead of realizing what we are called to is to help each of us become more like the image of God within us. So even
That's
just
beautiful.
consciously recognizing, like, in what ways do I wish my child were more like me? Or if they're the same type, in what ways am I maybe being triggered by things that were painful for me in this similar child? And can I release that and just say, God, my kiddo, introvert or extrovert, help me see them from your perspective. And then, two, realizing that it really is, I won't go into all the details, but our neurotransmitters, our nervous system preference, and even our brain pathways, they now know are biologically different for introverts and extroverts. So I think God made introverts and extroverts a complementary pairing. We
Mm,
see that so much in the creation story, like masculine, feminine, day and night, land and sea. I think introvert and extrovert.
Oh,
So when we are all fully who he made us, I think we're better together and more fully express who he is to the world.
beautiful.
that is beautiful. Well, okay, thinking about parenting and boys and girls, grandparenting as well, because I'm sure you're paying a lot of attention to your two littles, where they are in that. What differences do you notice show up? And as you said, in that duality, I mean, especially across genders, what do you notice show up?
Yeah, I think one of the most fascinating things I found in my research was because of all those things I mentioned, neurotransmitters, nervous system, introverts and extroverts experience happiness differently.
Really?
So, for extroverts, happiness is experienced as enthusiasm and excitement. It's a high dopamine emotion. For introverts, happiness is experienced as calm and contentment. And so that is based on a different neurotransmitter. So often I find parents will worry about their introverts' kids and think they aren't happy when they're actually just being introvert happy. And
Mm,
so that's
that's
one
so
significant thing.
good.
So, one beautiful question to ask the people in your house is, what does happiness feel like to you? And
Mm,
let them give you the synonyms. And I've done this a lot with people, and it's amazing how it usually is like, and when things are exciting and I feel like all energized and revved up. And then the other one's like, when I feel peace and I'm with my people and in my house, and so that can be one simple exercise to ask your kids and your spouse, whoever's in your home, what does happiness actually feel like to you?
that is so fascinating because this is a little personal information, but we both have had a similar experience as therapists. We would have rated really high or higher extroverted. And over all these years of doing this work, we have shifted much more significantly introverted. And I lost my mom 5 years ago. And I think something about that experience propelled me even farther
Mhm.
into the introverted lane.
Mhm.
And I remember at some point thinking, am I depressed? Because
Hmm.
happiness feels differently now.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
and I think what you said, I used to register happiness more as energy and
Mhm.
excitement, and now it feels like contentment and quiet and really
Yeah.
sweet things that are bubbling up inside of me, and I feel so grateful in the moment, but
Mhm.
I don't have all this effusive energy like I used to. So that's so
Yeah.
helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, and this is
Great.
even especially important at times like the holidays or family vacations, saying, "What would make Christmas feel really happy to you? What would make this
Mm,
vacation feel really happy to you?" Because you are likely, if you have kiddos of different types, to get very different answers. And
yes.
so it can also be kind of an in the moment, something big is coming, what would make this feel happy to you can be another little way to use that.
That's so
That's
great.
so good. And now, a quick break to hear from one of our awesome sponsors so that we can bring you all this great content.
David, remember when learning something new as a kid was actually fun?
Oh, yes. My grandfather and I built a birdhouse once. It was so crooked, the birds asked for a refund, but I felt like a genius.
For me, it was baking with my grandmother. I measured flour like a scientist. Half of it ended up on the floor, but I was so proud.
And now you're passing that messy learning tradition on to Whit and Henry, aren't you?
Absolutely. Whit got the koala crate from KiwiCo and made a little camping lantern. He immediately decided it was also a disco light for their dog Winnie. And Henry built a working pinball machine from the Kiwi crate, which is now the official scoreboard for who has to clean up after dinner.
KiwiCo's brilliant. They've got crates for science, technology, engineering, art, and math. STEAM projects delivered right to your door.
And these aren't one-and-done projects. The boys have played with theirs over and over. Whit still insists that Winnie prefers the strobe setting.
I love that KiwiCo encourages kids to be curious, creative, and persistent. And it secretly teaches them as they play.
Exactly. And the crates are so well made. Plus, I didn't have to come up with the ideas or run to 5 stores. It all came in one box.
Tinker, create, and innovate with KiwiCo.
Get up to 50% off your first crate at kiwico.com with promo code RBG.
That's up to 50% off your first crate at kiwico.com, promo code RBG.
Because sometimes the best family memories are made with a glue stick, a little science, and a slightly confused dog.
And now back to the show. Okay, building on that, many parents worry if their kids don't conform to extroverted norms. And I think I'd be curious if you'd agree or disagree with this. I feel like we live in an extroverted world, which I think can make introverted individuals feel not just overwhelmed, but confused at times, because I think to so much of what you're saying, we're setting the bar at an extroverted interpretation of happiness. So what would you say to a parent who's concerned their introverted child is too quiet in this extroverted world?
Yeah. Well, first of all, the introvert extrovert population is actually split worldwide about 50-50.
Really?
So people think, more dominant in our culture, in the North American culture, it is more extrovert dominant, but worldwide, it's kind of right down the middle. So that's one thing to know. There are also a lot of really well-known people that we might not think are introverts. Oprah's an introvert, so is Joanna Gaines. So knowing there are a lot of people out there that are leaders that are doing it in an introverted way is important. And then a little story I love is about the country of Finland. So Finland is consistently voted the happiest country in the world, like year after year. They keep getting ranked at the top. So years ago, Finland said, how do we get more people to visit our country? And they said, you know what? We are a quiet country. And in this world, that is valuable. Everyone is noisy. Everyone is overwhelmed. People pay for silence. They buy noise canceling headphones. So they did the opposite. Instead of saying we need to become Vegas, they were like, we're going to be who we are even more so. Our chaotic, overwhelming world needs the gift of quiet. And they have thrived. Not only people who visit them and need that, but also they themselves as a country are happier than everybody, apparently, if the research is, accurate. So if you can, it sounds funny, think of your kid as Finland. Like instead of saying, like, fit into this other culture, bring that out in them and know, like, yes, how many of us would raise our hands and say, the world is too noisy and overwhelming?
Yes.
I think even the extroverts would say that, like, I can't catch a breath.
Yes.
Well, your introvert kid is that God-given breath in our world. We need that more than ever. And so that is life-giving and beautiful and God-given, and just trusting that He has a place for them, that it may be a place that's not always as visible or as loud, but that they are needed. And so I think maybe just changing that perspective a little to my kid is the deep breath everyone in this world needs more than ever right now can be a place to start.
Beautiful.
Yes. And makes me want to go to Finland.
I know, right?
Indeed.
So
I've never
cool.
been. And I'm
Me
like, I think
either.
I need to go.
Well, they should pay for you to come over there. You're doing some
There
great
you go.
marketing for them as a country. Okay, so thinking further along those lines, knowing that, and you mentioned the holidays, this is certainly a time for that, but the big, overwhelming gatherings for kids, noisy, just a lot of people, noisy classrooms even. How can we help introverted kids in those situations, even help equip parents to equip them?
Yes, I think that's so important. And also just remembering you touched on this in your last episode, which I loved, that introversion is really about stimulation, not how much we like people. So, really, what you're thinking is how can I keep the stimulation of this event at a manageable level for my kid?
Mm.
So, one way to think of it is stimulation is higher whenever anything is unfamiliar or new. So, say if your kid's going to an event at, say, a trampoline park where they've never been, if you have a chance to take them ahead of time where it's not new when they get there, then it's less stimulating. So, or if you can talk them through and say, this is probably what it's going to be like. If it's too loud, let me know. We can take a little break. So, that's one piece, letting them ramp up. I think Susan Cain says extroverts are helicopters. They're just boom, they're there, they're going.
Ah,
And introverts are airplanes. They just give your kid a runway and they will do a lot better.
that's
So that's
great.
one thing. Two, when, it's acceptable, it's great to have earplugs in your purse all the time or your pocket if you're a guy. I have earplugs with me all the time and I wear them places like church and other noisy environments. And so even practical things like that, like can you have earplugs? It's interesting. My daughter is an extrovert, but she has her daughter is an introvert and they're at Disneyland. And she texted me yesterday and said, Eula was really overwhelmed. So we went to guest services and got earplugs. And then she was so much better. So even practical things like that, or is there something comforting they can bring with them to hold on to? And then afterward, they're going to need to decompress. And so giving them a little bit of margin, especially if you're doing events back to back, say, it's okay if you go in your room for 15 minutes and just be quiet. Or do you want to go sit in the car by yourself, and listen to something or read your book for a few minutes before we go on to this next thing? If you can just give them even those little bitty breaks, that helps a lot.
Mm.
And also just not saying you're so quiet to kids
Mm.
because of what we just talked about. Only say
Yes.
you're so quiet if it is a compliment. Then it is okay. Otherwise, not saying you're so quiet or why don't you speak up more or you're shy. Instead, just saying, how are you doing? Where's your level at right now? What do you need to feel more comfortable? And affirming them when they're brave because it is sometimes harder and they do get overwhelmed. And so I think all of that, just managing stimulation, little practical hacks, some ramp up on the front end and wind down on the back can make a huge difference.
Mm. You are offering so much wisdom
I
and
know.
practical. Let's keep expanding on that. So you encourage honoring introverted strengths like deep thinking and listening. What are some simple, everyday ways parents can help their kids lean into those strengths?
Yeah, I think we touched on this, but giving them the space to do that without guilt or taking it personally. So, a way to look at it, because it can feel like, oh, my kid doesn't want to be with me. And instead, you can say, my kid wants to give me 100% of themselves when they are with me, which is only possible if I let them recharge in solitude.
Mm.
So, one of the key things to remember with introverts, especially introvert kids, is quality over quantity. Are they going to be the kid who is running around following you 24/7, wants to be in the middle of everything you're doing? Probably not. Are they going to be the kid that you may have some of the most deep and meaningful interactions with? Probably so. So, if you can say, you know what, with this kiddo, quality trumps quantity. And so it is okay if they need time in their room to recharge because they will show up for me and everyone in their lives more fully, more themselves when I allow them to do that. And hobbies that go along with that, reading, being in nature, having a few close friends, things like that, just affirming it and saying, this is okay. This is your way of engaging in the world can really help them.
So, what about anxiety and rumination? A lot of introverts experience those things more deeply. And so, how can parents recognize when that's happening with their kids and what tools could they use to help?
Yes. So introverts are slightly more likely to struggle with anxiety and depression. There's just a lot going on in our inner worlds. And one of the biggest transformations for me, and that I've seen with other people, even talking to families with kids, is understanding that nervous system, that imagine our nervous systems as a continuum. And so in the middle is introvert or extrovert. So on the introvert, on the struggle side of that continuum is anxiety, possibly depression. On the strength side is empathy,
Mm.
attention to detail. All of their greatest strengths come from that same nervous system. So it is not, I need to fix something in my child. It is, how do I take them one small step at a time away from the struggle side of this and toward the strength side?
Mm.
Because you don't want to change that. Your highly empathetic kid who may grow up to be a counselor is also likely to struggle with anxiety. And so, how each day, every time you teach them how to regulate their nervous system, which can be as simple as giving them a hug, letting them take a 2-minute break, telling them it's okay if you're quiet sometimes, all of that you can picture as I am helping them move toward the strength side. And so that is a big thing to say, okay, this is all one continuum. We're just one step at a time going to move toward the strengths end together.
Mm,
Great.
this is great.
Okay, you've written that none of us is 100% introvert or extrovert. How can families honor and navigate the fluidity like ambiversion while raising siblings or household members with different energy needs?
Yeah.
Will you say what
That's
ambiversion is too? Is that
yes, yes. I actually don't think there are probably ambiverts. We're all slightly dominant one way or the other.
Mm,
But many of us are in that middle zone. And like you said, we all become more introverted as we age.
we
That's
all do.
backed up. We all do, backed up by
Wow,
research. Yep.
that's
So your
fascinating.
experience is very
Mm,
common. But a question I really like is, how can I love you well right now?
Mm.
Because we all assume that we want to be loved in the same way. We give what we think we would want to receive. And so pausing and just saying, how can I love you well right now? And letting your kids or whoever's in your house answer that, and then honoring that answer can be a huge step for everyone, because the answer is likely to be very different based on whether that person is an introvert or an extrovert. And then again, like we were talking about with holidays or things where everybody's together all the time, there's a lot going on, like sitting down and having a little intentional planning meeting and asking those questions like, what would make this vacation feel happy to you? What do you think would make it hardest for you? What is one thing that you want to make sure we do? What is one thing that you're worried that we might have to do? Just having a little simple set of check-in questions and then kinda agreeing together, "Okay, we're gonna have some fun, enthusiasm, go to the amusement park time for the extroverts, and we're gonna have an evening where we stay in and watch a movie and are quiet for the introverts."
yeah.
And deciding ahead of time can avoid some of that push-pull in the moment where you've got one person who at the end of the day is like, "This party is just getting started," and the other one's like, "I'm out, like, I just wanna go to bed."
Mm,
And read my book. So I think those are things that are easier to deal with up front to make some decisions together rather than in a moment when you have a whole lot of people who have a very different idea of what the next thing should be, can really help smooth some things
Mm.
over. So again, I think it's circling back to what I said in the beginning of continually just releasing each other from our expectations. Just noticing, like, I have an expectation in this moment. Maybe that expectation is based on love for this person and what I think is best for them, but it's still an expectation. How can I place that and this person in the hands of Jesus and instead welcome them as they are and figure out what's best, not for them or for me, but for us? And I think as we do that over and over, we learn each other. And when we learn each other, then we more easily in the moment adapt to each other. And that is what makes all of us feel safe and loved and known.
I feel like parents are like, wait, what were the questions? How do I? So we will make a list of those questions and put them in the show notes. Parents, if you're listening, there's just so much good information. You're going to have to listen to this episode a couple of times because there's so much that's helpful, Holley, that you're saying. So at one point, you mentioned this a little bit. You pushed yourself toward burnout, trying to live as an extrovert in ministry settings. What advice do you have for parents and kids who are pushing past their natural wiring in order to fit in?
Yeah, I did. I went through a year where I just got to burnout. I was the keynote speaker at a conference, and the next day in worship, like I just had tears, and I felt like God was saying, like, go home. And I knew he meant get on a plane, go home, take a nap, because girl, you need one. But also go home to who I created you to be. And so I think that is the invitation for all of us. We are all going to wander outside of who we're meant to be in one way or another. An extrovert's going to think they're too much and dial it down. An introvert's going to think they're too little and push themselves too hard. But just saying the invitation of God is to keep coming home to who he created us to be. And then figuring out what does that look like in daily life. So I love the idea of rhythms. I don't like rules, not a huge fan of, anything super rigid, but just asking introvert or extrovert, what are the rhythms in my life that make things not just doable, but sustainable? Because anything is doable for a season, but what's sustainable day after day, week after week, year after year is often very different. So, for example, for me, that means I need to start my day with quiet. I usually go on a walk outside where it's just me and Jesus. And that is a rhythm that helps my life be sustainable. I need regular time with people who are calming to my nervous system, like my husband, my close friends. That's a rhythm for me. For an extrovert, it might be I need regular time with a room full of people where it feels like a party. And so, and what are the pauses I need in my life? Maybe a daily pause, maybe a weekly pause. What are the pauses that I need? And I think that's important for introverts, but also for extroverts. And so I think it's just first noticing and not telling ourselves something must be wrong with me, but instead saying, I have permission to honor who God made me and getting curious about what is needed for that to happen, to replace shame with welcoming who we are. And then saying, what is one small shift in my life that I can make today? Like if someone's listening on behalf of themselves or their family, it can feel overwhelming to think we need to change a lot. But if we can just say, what is one small shift that we can make as a family today? And just do that. Maybe it means sometimes you don't have music on in the car. That seems like such a small thing, but that can be helpful for an introvert kid. And so taking that big, overwhelming feeling and just asking, what's one small step we can take today? What is one movement toward who we are and who God created us to be that we can make together? Over time, that really adds up.
One small step. That is a great reminder for every family listening right now. Okay, through faith, how would you say spiritual practices adapted for introverts have helped you? And how might parents guide their kids to connect with God in ways that fit their unique wiring?
Yeah. I think one of the biggest things is knowing your introvert kid may not like church. I have a podcast of my own, and we did a recent episode about what makes us feel close to God and what doesn't. And we had to finish the phrase, I don't feel close to God. And I said, when I'm at church. And I said, it's because of this. As an introvert, I feel close to God when I can shut out all external stimulation, when it's quiet in here and I can listen to his voice and commune with him deeply. When I'm at church, I'm in a room full of a lot of people, many of whom I don't know well. The music is really loud. There's lights. There's a lot going on. I'm an empathetic person, so I'm kind of picking up on the overall tone of everyone around me. Like, I'm just so distracted from the ways that help me truly feel close to God. Now, do I believe that church is important as a spiritual rhythm in my life? Absolutely. Does it add value? Of course it does. Am I going to keep going? Yep. But releasing myself from saying church doesn't have to be the place where I feel closest to God. It is okay if it is a spiritual rhythm I honor, but I feel closer to Him when I'm going on my morning walk by myself. And so if you can look at your kids who may be saying, I don't want to go to church, it's not that they don't love Jesus. They're probably just a little overwhelmed.
Mm.
And so if you can nurture spiritual practices in them, journaling is a great one for introvert kids. Like if you can get your kid a journal and say, this is your you and Jesus journal. This is where you can talk to him about anything. And it's just the two of you. Like that's a beautiful spiritual practice. If you feel comfortable praying with them in a one-on-one way, if something hard happens in their school day and just saying, you know what, you, me, and Jesus can talk about this. So they learn it's okay to have that outside of a group setting. That can be a really beautiful tool. And then just encouraging them to use their gifts in ways that support the body of Christ that may just be quieter. We said you two are counselors. I've worked as a counselor in the past. That's often who introvert kids step into that serving role because they're the first to notice at church that someone is in a corner by themselves looking like they're having a hard time. And so if you can just really affirm that there are quieter ways for them to serve, and that's just as valuable, that can go a long way too. So just saying things like, it's okay if you don't like this. Like, this is important to us as a family, so we're going to keep going. But it's okay if it's not always your favorite thing. And what can we do to help? Do you want me to bring the earplugs this week? What is it? Do you want to write in your journal during the service? If that's okay in the setting where you're in. And so that can be a real relief to kids because oftentimes I hear from grown-up introverts who say, I feel like I'm not a good Christian because I don't enjoy all the loud group activities that church often involves. And so if you can help your kids never get to that place to just learn there's all different kinds of ways to connect with God. And do we honor certain spiritual rhythms? Yes. But if feeling close to Him looks a little different for you, that's absolutely okay too. And that your gifts and your ways of relating to people support the body of Christ just as much as more visible ones. That's just something that will probably stick with them for the rest of their lives.
Yes. That's so helpful. Well, I feel like this conversation has been so illuminating and clarifying for me. And I know there are so many other people who feel that way. And Holley, for anybody who hasn't gotten to read your books yet or isn't as familiar with you, where can they find all the amazing things you're doing?
Yeah, the best place to go would be holleygerth.com/introvert. I have a whole page of introvert resources, including a quiz that you can take and have everyone in your family take that will tell you what percent introvert you are, since all of us have at least a little bit of introvert in us.
Yes.
There's also a lot of other tools, more info about the books, and everything that I've created for introverts, I gathered all in that spot. So holleygerth.com/introverts.
And your newest book is called
365 Truths for Every Woman's Heart.
So excited about that book as well. And you can find that there too.
That will be on my main page. So yes,
page.
If you go there, you can find your way to that eventually too.
Okay, perfect.
Holley, we like to end every episode with something fun and food related. So we've got a 2-part question for you. Part 1 is queso or guac. Part 2 is what's your favorite taco?
Yes, guacamole for sure. Someone once said, if you could only eat one food for the rest of your life, what would it be? And I picked avocado. So
Great choice.
Great.
So that would be it. And a local taco place has a mango habanero taco. That is probably my favorite. So I like the sweet, spicy, salty all together.
I was going to ask your favorite taco spot in Northwest Arkansas.
Probably Tacos for Life.
Tacos for Life. That's a great place. Well, Holley, thank you so much. It just has been a joy to get to know you and learn from you today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Delighted.
Holley Gerth is a best-selling writer, certified life coach, speaker, and a Razorback. She loves connecting with the hearts of women through her popular blog and books like You're Already Amazing and You're Made for a God-Sized Dream. She's also co-founder of Encourage, an online destination for women, which received more than 1 million page views in its first 6 months, and a partner with Dayspring. Holley lives with her husband, Mark, in Northwest Arkansas. David, what a team we have that we get to call friends who help make this podcast possible. Chris Starrett, our engineer.
Our management team at KCH.
And we are thrilled to be a part of the That Sounds Fun network.
Our music was created by the insanely talented Dave Haywood of Lady A.
And if this podcast felt helpful to you, please consider subscribing, liking, sharing, all the things.
We are grateful for you and cheering you on always.